Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another wrap up for last week, but this is all the hockey romances that I read because I've been on holidays, so I've been reading a lot. The first two are rereads, and I was talking to Izzy while she was reading these books for the first time, and the more she talked to me about them, the more I wanted to reread them, so I just did. So there is That One Night by Emily Rath, which is the prequel novella to Pucking Around. This is an MF novella. It is about Rachel, who is drowning her sorrows about losing a fellowship in a bar where she meets this guy. She doesn't know his name. They end up having a one-night stand. They have an amazing connection, but they decide not to exchange names. And she leaves in the morning and they still don't know who each other are. It is super steamy and just great, which then leads into Pucking Around, which is the full-length Why Choose contemporary romance, hockey romance novel that looks like a beast of a book to read, but is incredible and possibly one of the best Why Choose stories I've read in terms of character dynamics, particularly in a contemporary setting, which I find sometimes it can feel really off, but in this one it really works. So this is about Rachel reconnecting with Jake when she is awarded the fellowship as a backup participant and ends up at the Jacksonville Rays hockey team and finds out that Jake is one of their hockey players. She also develops a relationship with Caleb, who is Jake's best friend, and Jake and Caleb are also exploring their relationship, which has always been something more than friends, but they've never really acknowledged that. And it's also Rachel's relationship with Elmari, who is the goalie, and also how all four of them work together in a polyamorous relationship. And there is great consent, there is great communication, there are plenty of kinks in here. There is a great exploration of characters who are in the spotlight and who face criticism and media backlash for things. There is a really fantastic grand gesture towards the back, and some of the scenes in here are utterly hilarious, particularly at one point when Caleb and Rachel are egging Ilmari and Jake on while they're playing a hockey game. There's just such a sense of fun in this book. It is long, but it is one of the quickest reads that I have ever read, and this is one of the books that is definitely in my top 2 for 2023 so far. All right, so then I read Puck That by Karla Doyle. This is a novella. It is about a hockey player who is pining after their PR manager because she's very attractive, and he makes up excuses to go and see her all the time. And one night after practice, he is going to have a chat to her and he happens to overhear her on a phone call saying that she doesn't know anything about hockey, and he thinks he hears her say that she hates hockey, which annoys him, and he decides to make her life miserable. And as they spend time together, she begins to realize something is not quite right and challenges him on why he's behaving in a particular way, but especially since he's been so eager and enthusiastic about participating in PR opportunities prior to this. As I said, this one was super short, so there's not a huge amount of development in there, although it is a really good reminder to not judge people by one-sided phone conversations that you hear, because how do you know what's going on? Then there was Passion or Penalty by Leah Brunner. This is a prequel novella, I think, to a series that she has, and it is a brother's best friend hockey romance. We start off in the past, and she has just had some kind of surgery and she's hopped up on drugs, and she sends a drunken declaration of love to her brother's best friend via text. And we find out that he's obviously let her down quite gently because she's still only a teenager. And then we flash forward 5 years and she is working for someone who I think is running for Congress. I can't remember the details, but she is suddenly back in the same town as her brother's best friend, and she is not trying to cross paths with him, but through her work, she ends up seeing him at a game, and this rekindles their connection and their friendship, and he admits that the only reason he didn't return her feelings was that he was really concerned by her brother's reaction, and also the fact that she was so much younger than him. So now as adults, they begin to explore a relationship. This one is a closed door romance. It was interesting. I'm not sure if I'd be interested in reading other books, but never say never. I also read the most recent release in the Puckboys series by Finley and Saxon James, Foolish Puckboys. I love this series because it is so lighthearted. It is just honestly a celebration of friendships and the hilarity that follows some of these friendship groups. So if you haven't read CU Hockey or any of the Puckboys series, I do recommend them. They are all romances. They're just a really good lighthearted time. In Foolish Puckboys, we have Alex, who is a hockey player. He's just been traded to, I think, Seattle, and he's just recently gotten divorced. He's only ever been with his wife, and he decides that, you know, maybe he's just going to not worry about commitment. He's not sure if he wants to do a marriage thing again, but he wants to have a good time. But his friends end up throwing him a party, and someone calls the fire department because of a very minor fire in the backyard. And so these two firefighters turn up, one of whom is Gabe. And these two have an immediate attraction to one another, except Gabe does not know anything about hockey. Like in this book, Gabe was my spirit animal. And I just laughed every time. He's like, yeah, no. But the two of them end up spending more time together. Gabe is dragged along to quite a few of Alex's games, and they have this really wonderful relationship. And it's a nice juxtaposition of Alex, who is afraid of committing long-term again, and Gabe, who is ready for a relationship and something that is more than just a hookup. And I also liked that, you know, you had these two very different professions and they had to try and figure out a way to make their relationship work. Then I read Until I Get You by Claire Contreras, which was a book that Izzy had sent me that she was interested in reading. And this is a contemporary hockey romance with darker themes, and this is quite a bit darker than most of the books that I've read in a while in general. And this one is like, if you wanted a book like Twisted Love by Anna Huang, but you wanted it to be a hockey romance, this is probably where I would go, because you have a possessive, obsessive alpha hole hero who is kind of weirdly endearing in his own way, but ultimately at the end of the book, you probably could have groveled a little bit more and had a bit more of a grand gesture, but that's beside the point. It's an extremely well-written story. The only thing that I would say about this one, particularly when I was reading the synopsis for it, I knew that we had an obsessive possessive hero, and I knew that part of the story was that the heroine leaves him for a reason, and he is determined to track her down and take revenge on her because he believes that she's ruined his life by leaving, which is fine, except she also has another stalker with another issue that is quite significant. And for a while, I couldn't find anything that said that they were separate issues. So one of the content warnings for this book, there is sexual assault. It is described in quite a bit of detail on page. It is historical, but it is described. And for the first part of the book, I was very, very concerned that that was part of the revenge plot and not part of the things that happened previously. So I'm here to say that that is not the hero, because that would have forced me to put the book down straight away. But it wasn't very clear to me when I was first picking up the book that that's what it was. So I'm here to clarify for everyone who might want to read the book that there are two very separate people with very separate issues that affect the heroine. So the hero and the heroine in this story meet in college. He's playing college hockey, and she is really reluctant to get into a relationship because something has happened to her and she won't tell him what it is. She believes that she's in danger. She believes that people she loved have been killed because of the danger to her. And so she doesn't want to commit to a relationship. And then when all of this plays out, their relationship becomes known and both of them are attacked and hospitalized as a result. She leaves. And the hero doesn't understand why, because he hasn't got the full story. So we then flash forward 3 years. He has had 3 years as a pro hockey player. He has just retired because he made a deal with his dad, and his dad happens to own a technology company and thus has, you know, resources to help the hero track the heroine down, because she's gone to ground, she's changed her name, she's disappeared. But he tracks her down, he finds her, and he's determined to just make her life miserable. That involves some light stalking and generally just being an arsehole to her, until he starts to get the story of what happened. There is a forced engagement as part of the plot line. There is a very deranged, very disturbing stalker and SA plot, and the hero and the heroine trying to figure out, can they get back to where they were originally, where they were happy. It does read very much like a romantic suspense. The darker themes are there. It did stress me out quite a bit, as I said at the start, because I wasn't sure exactly to the extent to which the hero was going to go to. So if you have any questions about it, come and have a chat to me. Like, there's a reason I don't read a lot of dark romance. I enjoyed this one, but I will put all of those caveats in place because it was not the most comfortable read for me, despite the fact that it was incredibly well written and I was invested in seeing where it went. I just had my own triggers, I suppose. I also read Not Your Pucking Girl by Seridan Ann, which is a college hockey romance. Seridan Ann is an Australian author and she's going to Rare, so I found this one and figured I should probably read it before I go. And if you don't think that I'm going to be looking at everyone's tables and seeing who has hockey romances and possibly buying them, you may not know me at all. So Not Your Pucking Girl is about the heroine, who is a PR student at college. She's in her final year, and one of her final assignments is that she has to document and promote one of the college sports teams. And she and her best friend are paired up for this assignment. Her best friend is studying journalism, and the two of them work together to repair the reputation of the college's ice hockey team, who had a really terrible season the previous year. And both women end up in relationships with members of the hockey team. The heroine ends up catching the eye of the captain of the team, and they begin to explore a relationship and what that looks like, particularly since he's used to playing the field. This is another one that does have SA on page, and it has to do with the heroine's ex-boyfriend. And then there's a whole lot of over-the-top, very dramatic things that happen in this book. It was still fun, and like I was just like, what could possibly happen next? There is a house fire in this book as well. And, you know, that was the kind of thing I'm like, okay, we've just had this and we've just had this. What on earth is going to happen next? But I was intrigued by the story, and I would try a few of the other books in the series because some of the side characters were very intriguing to me. And then the last book that I read for this wrap up was Lucky Hit by Hannah Cowan, who is another author attending Rare. And this is the first book in one of her hockey series. And after reading this, I got very intrigued by the third book, which I think has a former pro women's ice hockey player, and I want to read that. If she has that at her table, I will be buying that. Otherwise, I'll be buying it when I come back. In this story, we have a hero who is still playing college hockey, but for his final year before he enters the draft, he decides to play for the Western Hockey League. And yes, I learned what the WHL was because they don't explain that in the book. I had to look it up. Well, I didn't have to look it up. I made an educated guess and then checked whether I was right or not. And just before he leaves, he ends up meeting this girl at a party that's his going away party. And she's been crying because her boyfriend's cheated on her and she's finally dumped him. And they spend a couple hours chatting, and then he leaves and he never expects to see her again. However, it turns out she happens to live in Vancouver, which is where he's transferred to. And once he sees her again, they have some friends in common. Her best friend is dating his captain, and he begins to pursue her. He's a total cinnamon roll of a hero. He's very sweet and is just determined to prove to her that he is in love with her. But of course, she's very distrustful because her former boyfriend was a hockey player and happens to play on the same team, which does result in some very tense scenes between a couple of the players on the team, but the hero does stand by her the entire time and defends her at every turn. The other thing that this book had was a subplot with the heroine's birth mother, because she went into foster care from a young age. She was adopted at 15 and she loves her adopted family, but her birth mother turns up and she is feeling all of the emotions of that because she didn't want to connect to her mother, and her mother has some ulterior motives for trying to get back in contact with her daughter, who is now dating a very popular NHL draft pick. I enjoyed this one and I enjoyed spending time with the characters, but it didn't have a pace that wanted me to keep reading. Like, I kept stopping because I suppose it didn't ultimately have a sense of urgency until the very end of the book. So it is a little bit slower paced than some of the others, but still interesting and still a lot of characters that I want to find out more about. The second book I know follows the guy who becomes the next captain of this particular team, but the third book is set in the future, and it is one of the heroine's best friends who is at that point a single dad, and I think he meets the heroine who is a hockey player. So I only have vague details, but I'm very intrigued by that one. Like, that's the one that I want to read. So stay tuned, because I would really like more books with female hockey players. I should have said that at the start. I would really love to read some books with some female ice hockey players. So that is what I'm on the lookout for. If you know of any, please leave them linked down below. All right, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you would like to recommend me any hockey romances, or if you just want to talk about the ones that I've talked about today, feel free to do so in the comments down below, or leave a hockey related emoji to let me know that you're here. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.